I am joined, of course, by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable SB Moyo, to just give us more in terms of the tactics that were used during the war. Honorable SB, you were one of the commanders that were on the ground. Can you tell us more about the tactics that were employed?
Well, thank you very much. Well, when you talk about the tactics evolves. It derives from the strategy.
Or they remain a secret?
Well, all I can tell you in summary is that the liberation struggle was fought based on the principle of the fish and water. In other words, with total support of the people. The masses. So when the masses were united, they were clear on the cause of the war. They were clear on the fundamentals and the objectives of where we're supposed to go. So the self-determination of this country basically was understood by the masses. And that was the role of the commissariat, to ensure that it popularizes the doctrine, so that the rest of the issues, which were military aspects, would then be conducted with ease. Remember, we were facing a regular force, which was well equipped, which had all the various assets like land forces, air forces, and everything. And we had nothing except that rifle, which is there, which is an AK rifle. But the survivability of that had to be based on the best tactic of the day.
How difficult was it to integrate the masses into being a part of the struggle?
It was not necessarily very difficult, because the masses, right from the onset, we had come from the masses. And therefore we came back to fight within the masses. And when we then were explaining the cause and the issues and the doctrine, then that became an easy process of doing that. So that's why when we talk about heroes here, they range from people who were actually holding guns to the people who actually supported the revolution. Zimbabwe. And everybody else. That's why when you talk about the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Defense and war veterans and others and so forth, so that all these groups had a role to play.
It is interesting that you highlight that, Minister Moyo, because traditionally we had that misconception that maybe a hero is someone who has fought the war of liberation. But if I can give the example, this year in January, we saw Dr. Oliver Mtukudzi, a musician, being declared a national hero.
Absolutely.
Has the definition changed? What is a national hero?
It has not changed. A national hero, in my view, is somebody who has persecuted a war of independence, of self-determination and economic development of Zimbabwe. So one is the war of self-determination, and then secondly it is the second part, which is to do with the development. So people like even the musicians played a role. Remember, there was quite a lot of singing, there was quite a lot of lyrics and other things which mobilized and provided the psychology which was critical for us to persecute the war.
In his address right now, the President, Emmerson Mnangagwa, did highlight that the re-engagement effort, which is one of the main pillars that he was hammering on since he came on, is this drive has received greater impetus. Can you tell us more about this?
Absolutely. In fact, as His Excellency has clearly and categorically stated in many forums, including this one, since his inauguration, he said we must end the isolation which had characterized Zimbabwe for the past 2 decades. And that isolation had to be ended through the re-engagement with those people who were negative attitude towards Zimbabwe, and of course reaffirming our friendship and the economic cooperation with all those who have always supported us. But the critical issue is that when we re-engage, we have re-engaged with Europe, we have re-engaged with Britain, we have re-engaged with the Americans. These were the countries which had viewed Zimbabwe in a specific, different and negative manner. So what the president is actually saying is that there has been some amelioration of basically results or relations between Europe and Zimbabwe, or between UK and Zimbabwe. That's why I've been in the UK about twice or whatever the case. And the kind of discussions which are already undertaking between ourselves and even with America symbolizes the fact that we are now, the relations are now thawing, and therefore we are seeing progress in that particular direction. Remember, our main difference was initially with the UK. But as a result of that, that's why our focus was also to do with UK. And we had to make sure that we rationalize those relations, and then after that, then we can go to the rest of the Europe and the Americas and so forth. So that has been, it's progressing very well indeed.
President Emmerson Mnangagwa's administration has developed a knack of challenging the status quo in light of being inclusive. Do you see the current administration taking into account the concerns raised mainly by the opposition that maybe the ruling party has the sole decision-making when it comes to determination of the national hero status?
You must understand where the hero's status comes from. And secondly, the opposition party, which is there today, was not there yesterday. But the hero's acre has always been there since independence. So sometimes you must not relate opposition parties to. It must be, it's a governed process. But that governed process is driven by a ruling party, which declares a hero. A hero in the nature of visualizing the contribution of that particular person in as far as the fight for the self-determination is concerned, or the fight for economic emancipation of this country is concerned. So it's not from that perception that we'll then go for a referendum to ask for who must be a hero. It has to be embedded within a decision maker who has been elected.
So, I think it's clear. And then maybe finally, as we close, Minister Moyo, looking at the living legends that sacrificed for this nation, are they getting enough recognition?
I think that has been expressed, I think, by not only by His Excellency the President, but also by the Minister responsible for Defense and War Veterans particularly, that it is critical that we really look after the legends or those who fought for the liberation struggle. Because remember, there are many who are not advantaged like myself, probably. Most of these are not working, and therefore they need to be empowered. They left school at the ages of 13, 14, 15, 16. And that determination to leave school at that particular time and then fight for 5, 7 years right in the bush just for the cause of this country. I mean, surely this country has and can also find a way of saying thank you. But I'm aware that these are issues which are being discussed. We've heard about the issues which are being proposed, like the bank, War Veterans Bank, which which will provide a sustainable way of providing support to these members. But other empowerment measures have been attempted, but they lack capital funding. But what we must, if we are really based on our constitution, it is also stated clearly in the constitution of Zimbabwe that the war veterans of Zimbabwe are a critical component, and we are going to be extinct very soon anyway, and probably you will have to look for us in a zoo.
There will be more of the younger generation.
And, you know, there is more of younger generation, but the younger generation now should learn now before we go. You know, it's very critical.
Honorable SB, thank you so much for your time. That was the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, retired Lieutenant General Sibusiso Moyo, giving us his insight as one of the commanders who was on the ground actually in the War of Liberation, telling us there also of the importance of the sacrifice that was made by the ordinary people, and the importance of also remembering the war veterans that sacrificed their lives for the betterment and the independence of Zimbabwe.
Sakunda Holdings. Now you can go.